We are under the lights inside the Coliseum at the Alliant Energy Center, and we're testing strength, but Chase, not a barbell in sight.
It was clear that Saturday was going to be a big lift. We needed that kind of more raw strength test. It fit in the overall structure of the week. What wasn't as clear initially was what lift was it going to be. Obviously we'd had some pretty big success with the lifting ladders in the past, all the way back to 2009 when we had the deadlift ladder. That was kind of the first variation of that, super cool event. And then as recent as 2021, where we had the snatch, and again, dramatic shootout between Tia and Annie at the very end. And it was one of the last things that actually got written in firmly. Had to kind of figure out what everything else was going to look like, which narrowed down the possibility of movements that we were going to use for a heavy lift pretty significantly. So if you take the lens of what have we done in recent memory for lifting ladders, it kind of pointed towards something like a clean and jerk. But when I started looking at the rest of the week, we'd gone overhead a lot. Elevated Elizabeth featured the clean. There was a lot of overhead already. And so I started thinking about what other ways can we express a strength test that is still legitimate. It's not so far outside the box that the strongest won't win it, but it's not going to be something that athletes may have experienced specifically. And I think that's an important broad stroke for testing fitness. If we go all the way back to the beginning and we think about what is fitness, and the article that Greg Glassman wrote way back early on, he talks about fitness being this universal concept that applies well to anything. It's that feature that's at the intersection of all these different activities that lends itself well to whatever it is that you want to pursue.
So this is going to be kind of informal. What we're going to do basically is we're going to start with an arbitrary low quote weight, one for men, one for women. Everybody get a crack at it. Once they've all had a crack at it, cool, we'll bring out the next weight. Everybody will take a crack at it. We'll just keep going until you're like, I think I've had enough, or I can't do it. Sound good?
Yeah.
Sure. Nobody be a hero with this. We're all tired. We've all got more work to do. So don't destroy yourself for the sake of a lift here. That's not the point. Okay? The point is to fact find and figure out what's a reasonable range to start and end at. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yep.
So get to the shoulder, arm to the side. You guys give them a down signal.
Okay.
Might as well practice as well.
Sure.
This is my CrossFit Games.
Way back in the day, in the early journal articles, Greg Glassman used to talk and allude to this theory of third wave adaptations. Conceptually, the idea is the first wave of adaptation that you experience when you're new to anything is fast because you're figuring it out, and so the progress is pretty dramatic. First time you touch a barbell to the third, fifth, 10th time, there's big improvements because you're just getting the basic patterns down. Second wave is when you've got those basic patterns down and the technique that you're developing, the attribute that you're developing, still transfers over pretty readily to other things. So I gain an extra 50 pounds on my deadlift, I see an immediate improvement in my ability to run, jump, etc. Third wave adaptation is when I'm so experienced with this thing and I'm so dialed in I may continue to drive that particular attribute forward in that specific expression, but that is unlikely to have any more tangible benefit elsewhere. And that's what we want to avoid if we're trying to pursue fitness. Fitness is squarely within that second wave of adaptation. I want to have enough adaptation that the thing itself gets better and it contributes to other things. I don't want it to be so specific that I see an extra 10 pounds on the thing that I'm doing, but it doesn't matter anywhere else. And so the Sandbag Ladder breaks us out of that third wave and puts us squarely back into, hey, what can you apply based on how you've trained? Not what can you apply because you are so specific to the task that that's the only way you can do it. You know, it's fun to express your fitness via other means. That's what it's all about, is this transferability from where I develop my fitness. How can I get that to extend out and do other stuff with it? That's the whole point. And hey, this is not new in CrossFit Games history. Shout out to the old regionals. Dave had a year where he came to us early and he said, look, this year at regionals, hear me out, we're not gonna use any barbells, 0. And we were all kind of skeptical at first. Well, I don't know. And he's like, no, dumbbells are going to be the thing. It's going to be dumbbells and other elements only. That's it. And it's going to be plenty hard. And sure enough, it was. And, you saw the same suspects rise to the top of the leaderboard. Why? Because they were really fit and they could transfer that fitness into anything that was put in front of them. That's the whole point. Well, number one, I wish Brent would have finished his lift. He had it. I wish he would have finished it. And he knew he had it too. So I wish that would have been great. But man, hats off to all those guys who made it that far. I wish we would have had that 350. And the reason we didn't is because in testing, it didn't look like it was gonna happen. We had some of the strongest people really struggle north of 300 pounds. I mean, Griffin Raleigh, he made 330, but he looked like that was it for him. And he is one of the strongest athletes in the men's field. So, you know, to see him struggle with that, it's a real testament to the level that those athletes can take themselves to when it's time to go and when it's time to put it all out there. So that was really cool to see. I am curious though, like if we had the 350 available and the athletes would have had that in their mindset that it was going to extend there instead of, okay, we got the 340, it's done. Oh, and surprise, now I gotta get ramped back up again. Like what difference would that have made? We'll never know, but.
Yes, that's one, G.
Is it too on the nose to talk about like, okay, we got this concept of these 3 basic stages of adaptation. You know, the everyday athlete, like 1 and 2, that's where we are. We get introduced to something, it feels weird, you can't string it together. Couple of exposures later, or maybe many exposures later, depending on how quickly you pick it up, you get to that point where you're like, okay, cool, I got this skill enough that I can refine it. And when I'm doing it, I can see that it makes my other stuff better. That's really cool. I mean, that's where we live at the affiliate. That's what we do, and that's how we coach people using CrossFit. You know, it's never about, I just want one thing and one thing only, and that's it. You know, that's not the name of the game. Fitness is about being able to express in ways that aren't always going to be what you expect. There's definitely aspects of pure attributes being on display in ways that you have trained for specifically, but that's not the only way to approach it, and it's certainly not the only way that fitness should be shown.